and welcome to this week's episode of War Games Geek. This week I'm painting another Barbarian figure. This is the third of 4 Barbarians that I'm painting for a little sort of skirmish table game. And what I've done is I've primed him with the Barbarian Flesh primer paint from the Army Painter range. And he's ready now to have a lick of paint. So what I've done is he's a big chap, and I've had to cut his base down a little bit and just sort of push his legs in slightly just to get him to fit on this circular base. But fortunately he's not got any damage, and he's looking okay. So what I'm doing first of all then, I'm going in and I'm painting all of the chainmail with shining silver. I'd normally go for gunmetal colour, but I'm going a little bit brighter just to see what the difference is, really, just to sort of play with the paints and play with the different sort of shades and stuff like that. So, as I say, it's got a chainmail shirt on, and that goes down to the belt, and then it comes out a little bit beneath the belt as well. So I'm going to get on to those couple of bits and get those done. So I'm just taking my time and getting into all the little recesses here. It's a bit fiddly when you've primed in this sort of pink colour. You've got to make sure you get the paint into all of those little recesses there on that chainmail shirt. And as I say, it goes underneath the belt as well. So I'll crack on underneath there. And just very carefully, trying to avoid the skin that I've already primed, and I've just sped ahead slightly there so you can see that that's the chainmail shirt now done. So just show you the other side, just turning around slightly and show you what I've done with him. And then I'm going to go in and I'm also going to paint the shining silver on the blade of his axe as well. Now it's a slightly thinner paint, so it's going to need a couple of coats. So 2 thin coats is better than 1 thick blobby one. And then what I'm doing now is I'm doing all of the fur detail. So he's got this sort of fur loincloth, and he's got a cloak on, and at the top of the cloak at the back as well, that's got a fur detail as well. And for both of those I'm using mummy robes. Again, that's the Army Painter. All of the paints for this video are from the Army Painter range of paints. So again, there's quite a lot of sort of detail and quite a lot of depth to that. So what we're going to have to do is just try and get this paint into all of the grooves. It'd be nothing worse than pink showing through, especially around the loincloth area, because people might wonder if there's something else that's poking out. So make sure we get a good coverage of paint on that area there. Just coming down the side then, just trying to be as careful as I can and just try not to get any paint onto his leg. But as I've mentioned in most videos, the Army Painter paints, the primers are an exact 100% match for the... Oh, we've got some on the cloak there. They're 100% match for the bottled paints. So if you do make any little mistakes, you can quite easily tidy up with the bottled paint. So just making sure I've got all of the loincloth done. And yeah, I'm quite pleased with that. Just have a look around the other side, just make sure the back's okay. And then once I've done that, I'm happy. I'm going to now do the fur for the sort of top of this cloak that he's wearing as well. And whilst I'm doing that, I need to sort of think about what sort of colour I'd be happy doing that cloak in. So I'm thinking something like red or green or something similar like that. He has got, and you'll see that as we go round the figure, he's got like a sort of crown on as well. So I'm thinking he's probably the leader of these barbarians. So a nice sort of rich colour, I think, for the cloak would be quite good. But so carrying on then, getting this all done. Mummy robes, I've finished that now. I've just sort of sped that along slightly, and as you can see, it's already coming together quite nicely. So what's next to do then? I'll just show you, spin him around, and I've decided on goblin green for the cloak. So there we are. So I made a decision. Goblin green for the cloak. Again, it's a thin, nicely thin paint, so it will need a couple of coats. If you're new to painting, then you might find it easier to just do a couple of thin coats rather than if the paint's thick, it just blobs on. It doesn't look quite right. So thin your paints and just do a couple of coats, and it just seems to it just flows better onto the figure. So taking my time then, going up to the top of that cloak there where it meets onto the fur. And then as we come down the side here, again, I need to be a little bit careful there with the fur from his sort of loincloth. So that's that. I've just sped ahead. I've done 2 coats of paint on the cloak, and quite pleased with how that's come out. And I say, once it's been shaded, actually I've just noticed a bit there, it's a bit thin, so I'll probably do another 3rd coat on that one just to really make sure it's had a nice coverage of paint. Okay, so moving on then, I'm going to now paint in his hair, and for that I'm using Desert Yellow. I do like that colour, I think it comes out quite nice for hair. And you can now just about sort of see, just if we zoom, just let that focus in a little bit, you can kind of see this, he's wearing this little crown type thing, and the hair comes out beneath it, and there's obviously the hair on top of his head as well. So just need to sort of take my time here. Don't matter too much if I get it on the axe handle, that's not been painted yet, and it doesn't matter if I get it too much on the crown either, because that hasn't been painted, but we do need to try and avoid the face. So just take your time. I've got a nice thin brush here for this this detail, and just run it in the direction of the hair. It seems to go better into the sort of grooves of the hair, the sort of way the hair's sort of naturally flowing. So try and paint in that same direction so the paint goes into the recesses there as well. So let's turn him around, and what I'll do is I'm going to just do the top of his head. Let's just in a little bit there that needs to be tidied up. So let's get down to the end of the strands of his hair, and then we can turn the figure over and just start painting the hair that's on the top of his head as well. So that's Barbarian Flesh, and again that's in the Army Painter range of paints. Okay, so his hair's all painted in. You can now sort of see that crown, it's still pink, but I'm going to do all of the metal area on him. I'm going to do in Greedy Gold I'm going to use for those. But before I get onto that, let's just show you the leg detail. So the legs, he's got these sort of leather, sort of almost shin pad type things going on. I've done another coat of the Goblin Green on his cloak, so that's now all done, and you can kind of see these sort of shin pads that he's wearing there. So I'm going to do those in a sort of leathery colour, certainly a sort of a material rather than metal. They look like they're sort of held on with some sort of thin straps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint those in, and let me just choose the paint for those. I'm going to go for Fur Brown. So there we are, so Fur Brown for these shin pads. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the whole thing, and then I'm going to try and pick out these sort of straps that are like a laces sort of thing going on that hold those in place. So nice and carefully just paint those in, try and avoid the skin area of his shin just below his knee there, and just get this this painted in. So I say Fur Brown is the colour for these shin protectors. So just taking my time, coming right down. I'm going to go round the back as well. Some of the leather pops around the back. You can see that at the top, sort of just behind the knee, and then we've got those straps to do. So I've just gone ahead slightly, and what I'm doing is now I'm going to paint in these little sort of lace strap things that are coming around. I've no doubt I'm going to bodge this, so yeah, didn't take a second to do that. So I'm going to have to go back over that. So I've just painted in these straps that go around the legs that hold these sort of shin protectors up. So yeah, I'm going to have to just come back in again with some of the Fur Brown to do that. Excuse my hand in the way for a moment, just trying to get into the gap in between there. Yeah, so that's going to need just a little bit of touching up, and then same on this side as well. Might have been an idea to paint those in first, but so that's that side. Just going to get this one done so you can kind of see what I'm trying to achieve here. And what I've done is I've gone ahead and just tidied that all up, and you can see now that the shin protectors look pretty good. So painting in the handle of his battle axe here, so it's a single bladed axe. So the one I've done previously was a double bladed axe, and what I'm using for the shaft of this axe is leather brown. It's quite a nice colour. It's quite thin, so again it's going to take a couple of coats, and just take your time. Try not to bump into anything you've already painted. If you do, just go back over and tidy it up. And turn him around, and you can see the other side of this axe handle is still in pink, so that needs to be done as well. Okay, so just taking my time, getting into all the gaps, all the little recesses, and just trying to be as careful as I possibly can. Okay, so that's the figure all done. Now I just need to do all the metal work, and for all of that I'm using Greedy Gold. So he's got 2 bracelets, one on each wrist. So just taking my time to paint that in, and there we go, it's going on nicely. With the metallic paints, just make sure you do give them a really good shake. You should give all the paints a shake, but just give the gold ones an extra, or the metallic ones rather, a real good shake, just to get all that's it, lovely. Just to get all a nice mix on the paint, and then just going underneath the bottom of his wrist, and then there we are. So that's that partially done. So the other bits I'm going to do in this greedy gold is I'm going to do his crown, I'm going to do all of the belt, and as I say, on the other wrist he's got a bracelet there as well, so I'm going to paint that in as well in the greedy gold. Okay, so let's crack on and get those done. And there we are. So that's him all ready now for some quick shade dip, and he's going to have the usual strong tone treatment, and then what we'll do is we'll get a base on him, and he can then join the rest of his mates that I've already painted. So let's go ahead then and start looking at the dipping process. So with the quick shade, as I've mentioned in previous videos, you can either dip the figures in, it does seem to have a fair bit of waste, or you can brush the stuff on. So that's what I'm going to be doing now, and you'll notice quite quickly the difference it makes to the depth of the figure. So just get plenty on your brush and just make sure you get it into all of the little recesses. So particularly here on the chainmail, there's quite a bit of depth in there. So just give it time to soak in. And with this, I'm just going to keep on loading up this brush. Now, try and use an old brush if you can. Although in saying that, if a little bit of fairy liquid and some warm water, what I tend to do is put a little bit of fairy liquid into the palm of my hand, just a little dab, and then put some warm water on the brush, the actual bristles of the brush, and then just rub it into my hand, and that seems to get it off quite quickly. So not too bad an effort to clean up. So what you'll notice here then straight away is the looking at the sort of front of his legs there, the shade has gone right into the sort of depths of his muscles and gives quite a nice decent bit of definition there, and again likewise all over the fur of his sort of loincloth thing going on there, and into the details on the chainmail vest. So turning it around then, and just onto the blade of the axe, and then straight into the fur on the back of his cloak there, and it pretty much immediately just completely changes how that looks. It just gives it so much depth and sort of brings out the detail really nicely. So just make sure you don't miss anything. So into the sort of inside of his leg there, where the sort of back part of his fur sort of cloth is, protecting his dignity. And then just go into the cloak, just go across, and then just make sure you run the brush up and down as well, just to make sure you're getting into all of those little recesses. So that's what happens. It just sort of soaks in and then just gives everything such a decent bit of depth. And just look around the figure, just look around, and just going to go in line with the cloak there, and just make sure you take off any sort of excess. So just turning the figure back around, I've just noticed a bit there on the arm. Just needs another little bit on there, and just have a real good look around it. Once it dries, there's nothing wrong with you adding a bit more to it if you wanted to give it a double dip type job, but just make sure that you've covered everything and it's all had a good coating in the quick shade dip. So that's the figure pretty much all done. What we need to do now is just leave that off to dry. I've noticed a little bit there, there's just too much on the blade there. Let's just take some of that off. Leave it to dry 24 to 48 hours. It says minimum 24 hours on the tin. As I say, I usually go for 48 hours, and just to be really sure it's dry. So that's it, let it dry. So here we are now, all finished. I've given him plenty of time to dry. I've given him a couple of coats of matte varnish, and I've put a little base on him there, so he's the same as the ones I've done in the previous videos, the previous two Barbarians. So if you haven't seen those videos, please do go ahead and have a look. And so this one's now done. I'm going to add him to the two that I've already done. As you can see, fits in very nicely with the theme I'm trying to achieve there. So I've got one more of these guys to do, so please do tune in for that video. Please do like, subscribe and share the videos, and as always, thanks for watching.